In our last episode, we talked about the incarceration of Blessed Mhlanga, and I promised you I'll come back with the real reason why Blessed Mhlanga has been arrested, or why Blessed Mhlanga is behind bars. As I said, the official reason that we all know is that Blessed Mhlanga uploaded a YouTube video of Blessed Geza, in which the war veterans demanded the resignation or the stepping down of Mnangagwa because of the failures on the socio-economic scene in Zimbabwe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for another episode of How to Loot a Country, a long-running series starring the one and only President Emmerson Mnangagwa, featuring his loyal legal henchwoman, Attorney General Virginia Mabiza, and a special guest appearance by career fraudster and full-time opportunist Maurice Brown Gwedegwe. The latest plot twist: they have set their sights on the Post Office Savings Bank, the POSB, because apparently there is still something left in Zimbabwe that hasn't been looted yet. What a tragedy. Now, in case you thought the legal system was meant to serve justice, let us introduce to you the real function of the Attorney General Office in Zimbabwe. It's writing secret letters authorizing grand-scale thefts. Mabiza, who has been Mnangagwa's most trusted legal footstool for years, took it upon herself to draft an official but confidential letter to the CEO of POSB, giving him very clear instructions. Work with HIG Investment Group, a shell company so transparent you can see straight through to the crime itself. And who is running this group? None other than Maurice Brown Gwedegwe, a man so steeped in scandal that even the Anglican Church, an institution known for forgiveness, kicked him out for embezzlement. Yes, you heard that right. When you get excommunicated for fraud, you know you have reached a special level of dishonesty. But of course, in Zimbabwe's political landscape, being caught stealing isn't a disqualifier. It's practically a job application. So in May 2019, despite his impressive record of misappropriating funds, Mnangagwa appointed Gwedegwe to Zimbabwe Defense Commission. Because who better to defend Zimbabwe's interests than a man whose main skill set involves siphoning money? Fast forward to October 2022, and this same Gwedegwe magically appeared at the ZANU-PF 7th National People's Congress, proudly claiming to represent the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. The ZCC, in a move of sheer panic and confusion, had to issue public statement essentially saying, "We don't know this man, he's not ours." But by then, Gwedegwe had already made his rounds, shaking hands and securing his seat at the looters' table. Now, back to the great POSB heist. Mabiza's letter was carefully labeled confidential, not because the deal was some national security matter, but because if ordinary Zimbabweans got wind of this bank robbery in progress, there would be an uproar. And as history has shown, ZANU-PF prefers its crimes to remain private until they have successfully gotten away with them. The instructions were simple. Gwedegwe and his merry band of thieves must be given full access to the bank's vaults. And what do bank vaults contain? Or just minor things like cash, gold, legal documents, and possibly the last shreds of financial stability that Zimbabwe has left. Nothing too important, right? Just the entire financial backbone of the People's Savings Bank. One can only imagine how this conversation went down behind closed doors. Perhaps Gwedegwe walked into the bank like a movie villain, dramatically removing his sunglasses and say, "All right, open the vaults, the president said so." Meanwhile, the bank CEO, knowing fully well that refusal equals sudden job loss, or worse, probably, nodded frantically and replied, "Of course, sir. Would you like us to pack the money in suitcases or do you prefer large duffel bags?" But this wouldn't be a true ZANU-PF scandal without the brutal silencing of those who dare expose it. Enter Blessed Mhlanga, a journalist who made the fatal mistake of thinking Zimbabwe still had press freedom. After hosting Jealousy Mawarire on his TV program, where Mawarire openly blew the whistle on this entire criminal enterprise, Mhlanga quickly found himself behind bars. His crime? Journalism. Apparently in Zimbabwe, the only people allowed to review government corruption are the government officials themselves accidentally in the middle of looting.
Who we want to lead us.
He has presided over unprecedented corruption in this country. And unfortunately, this corruption is happening around people that hang around with him.
But Jealous, we don't want to just talk about unprecedented corruption and we don't have evidence of it, right? Because people just say that the president has presided over an unprecedented corruption. Do you have evidence that there's this corruption? And if you do, please, let's have it so that the people who are watching this program have benefit of insight to say, no. This is corruption. This is tangible. And surely the president must deal with it or must be ashamed of it.
Certainly there is evidence. Evidence is there. It's clear. There's clear evidence of the president, involvement of the president in cutting corrupt deals. And one example is the issue of privatizing POSB. And it's very recent. The president actually wrote a directive to the Attorney General's office to instruct the Attorney General to go and impose a so-called investor to POSB. And this, my research has actually found, unearthed that the same investor that the president, through the Attorney General's office, is forcing upon POSB, has actually gone through the processes earlier on, gone through ZIDA and the joint venture unit of ZIDA. And the joint venture unit of ZIDA had actually unearthed the red flags within this investor group. And this investor group is called Hebrew Investment Group. If you Google it, you won't find it. And it's being funded by one bishop, Morris Brown Gwedegwe. And this Brown Gwedegwe has no history of doing any business in the country. In fact, any search on the internet, it will lead you to a time when he was fired from the Anglican Church by Bishop Kunonga for embezzling church funds. This is the guy who's fronting this so-called Hebrew Investment Group. And this Hebrew Investment Group went through the processes, through ZIDA. And the ZIDA joint venture unit actually flagged up that this is a bogus institution. And they just dismissed them. But what then happens? A presidential directive to the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General's office then writes instructing the POSB CEO and POSB board to take this investor on board. And this is a presidential directive. And the president...
have you seen this directive?
Yes, I've seen the directive. I have a copy of it.
If you have it, I think it would be prudent for our viewers to actually have a look at it, so that they know that you're not
This is the presidential directive. This one. This is the directive from the president's office, instructing the Attorney General's office to instruct a financial institution to say, take this investor. And if you research on the investor, this is a bogus, a Ponzi scheme.
But why would the president sign this way? He has appointed a whole, he put a whole, what do I call it? I'm not very business-like.
The Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, ZIDA.
No, not ZIDA. The one that is led now by the former Reserve Bank governor, John
Mnangagwa
the
Investment Fund.
Investment Fund. Is it
Yes.
not the responsibility of?
It's-
But it is under the president's office, right? So it is within
No,
his
the
purview.
Mnangagwa Investment Fund is the one that is now holding the shares, POSB shares, on behalf of the government of Zimbabwe. So ideally, this is an investor's issue. So the joint venture should have been between the Mnangagwa Investment Fund and the so-called international investor, which in this case happens to be a bogus group called Hebrew Investment Group, which has no history of any financial activity that you can find out. In fact, if you Google some of the directors, the CEO, one called Emil Koo, you find out that this is just a bogus individual in the United States who set up a Twitter account and a Facebook account and began to promise people that he was going to come up with an investment unit in 2020. And if you go through the post on his Facebook account, it's in 2020, it was coming soon. In 2021, coming soon. In 2022, coming soon. In 2024, coming soon. This guy is not known for anything.
Lead who we want.
Immediately after this interview, the government's propaganda mouthpiece tweeted, implying that this POSB issue is the one that is going to get him locked up. And true to his words, he was locked up way after the 2 interviews that he gave with Geza. But of course, nobody would want to say we have arrested Blessed Mhlanga because he exposed the president for corruption. No. We have arrested Blessed Mhlanga because he gave a platform to somebody who undermined the authority of the president. Both interviews undermined the president, right? But the jealous Mawarire one was a big nuclear bomb. And so the cycle continues. Mnangagwa and his gang still, they get caught, they silence the exposers, and then they move on to the next national asset. What's next? The Reserve Bank, the Victoria Falls, maybe the entire Kariba Dam? One thing is certain, nothing is safe. Not as long as Zimbabwe remains under the rule of a government that treats corruption as both a sport and a career path. But fear not, Zimwaves TV is here to keep you informed, entertained, and outraged in equal measure. So if you enjoy staying ahead of Zimbabwe's latest government-sponsored bank robberies, make sure you subscribe, because if we don't expose them, who will?